Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something we all interact with, but rarely actually think about: the invisible economics of everyday brands. I mean, we walk past them, we eat at them, and we buy their products literally all the time. But the hidden mechanics, the sheer business strategy behind these food and beverage giants, it's absolutely fascinating.
So, what do a robotic salad, punk rock water, and a Japanese 7-Eleven all have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing. But as we're going to uncover today, these seemingly completely unrelated business models are actually tied together. They're united by a highly sophisticated machine of efficiency, data, and, well, human psychology.
Okay, let's dive right into this and look at the strategic pillars that allow these major brands to just completely dominate the market. We'll be looking at the science of efficiency, how they scale without losing quality, data-driven store expansion, the rise of cult brands and niches, and finally, the immense power of localization. Let's get into it.
Act 1. The Science of Efficiency. Doing more with less. To really grasp this idea of doing more with less, we've got to look at the ultimate hacker of grocery profit margins. I'm talking about Aldi. Think about your typical Aldi experience for a second. It's kind of weird, right? Why do all these strict limitations actually feel like a perk to us? Why does seeing way fewer workers, having to dig around for a quarter just to get a shopping cart, and dealing with absolutely zero frills actually make us trust Aldi more?
Well, it comes down to this brilliant psychological concept called compensatory inferences. Basically, when we see visible cost-cutting measures, our brains subconsciously assume that those savings are being passed directly back to us in the form of lower prices. Aldi deliberately leans into this psychology. They want to signal that their milk and eggs are cheaper because of hardcore operational efficiency, not because they're selling you low-quality stuff. So when you see products still sitting in cardboard delivery boxes right on the floor, your brain instantly calculates, oh wow, I am getting a massive bargain here.
To put that efficiency into perspective, a traditional supermarket carries an average of 31,000 unique items, or SKUs. Aldi, they carry only about 1,600. By ruthlessly cutting down their SKUs to just the absolute essentials and literally leaving those items right in their delivery boxes, they severely limit the actual number of footsteps their employees have to take around the store. And that micro-efficiency, it generates incredible cost savings across the entire business. Now, we see this exact same science applied in a totally different sector with Sweetgreen. They face massive overhead because they source high-quality ingredients directly from farms and prep everything fresh in-house. So to overcome that overhead and actually hit profitability, they're taking some highly tactical steps. They're growing their footprint by opening 35 new restaurants, driving up existing store sales, keeping a ridiculously strict discipline on their cost structure, and most impressively, they're rolling out what they call the Infinite Kitchen. It's this automated robotic salad assembly line that lets them hire a third fewer staff and crank out a custom bowl for you in under 3 minutes.
Moving on to Act 2. Scaling without losing quality. Or, as it's often called, the growth trap.
You see, scaling a niche idea up to massive proportions creates immense friction. A perfect example of this scaling challenge is the meal kit industry. Look at this breakdown. HelloFresh and its subsidiaries command a staggering 78% of the US market. Meanwhile, early pioneers like Home Chef and Blue Apron are sitting way down at just 12 and 6%. Why the huge gap? Because HelloFresh leverages massive economies of scale to negotiate way better pricing on ingredients, which keeps them consistently profitable. The smaller guys, though, they struggle with the brutal reality that almost 90% of customers just canceled their subscriptions by the end of the year. For HelloFresh, sheer scale is their armor against that fickle human behavior.
Or consider the tension a brand like Shake Shack faces. As they expand, they're totally caught between their identity as a premium cook-to-order brand and the sheer brutal economic necessity of the fast food drive-thru. The drive-thru industry standard for speed is 4 to 7 minutes, but Shake Shack's cook-fresh model, that usually takes 6 to 8 minutes just to fill an order. So to even compete, they've had to optimize relentlessly. We're talking doing literal time-motion studies in the kitchen and shifting to pre-cut lettuce just to save their staff precious seconds of prep time without sacrificing that premium vibe. It's a really tough balancing act.
This brings us to Act 3, data-driven store expansion, the brains of the operation.
Let's look at Cava, the fast-casual Mediterranean chain. Their CEO, Brett Schulman, described their competitor, Zoe's Kitchen, with this absolutely brutal quote. "It was a melting ice cube and we didn't want it to turn into a puddle." Ouch, right? But Cava executed this brilliant data-driven strategy. They bought out this failing competitor, which by the way was quadruple their size at the time, and then completely abandoned the Zoe's brand. They just wanted the real estate.
They converted Zoe's locations into Kava's for half the cost of building new restaurants from scratch. Boom. Instantly, they became the largest Mediterranean chain in the entire country.
But you know, when it comes to truly leveraging data, nobody, and I mean nobody, does it quite like 7-Eleven Japan. They operate on a philosophy called Tanpen Kanri. Basically, it's a Japanese retail philosophy of intensely localizing product assortments based on real-time data and immediate customer needs. And when the Japanese parent company finally took full control of the brand, they used this exact philosophy to completely overhaul their lagging, outdated American stores.
And the difference? It's staggering. The old American model relied on this clunky, top-down ordering system with just 2 deliveries a week. That resulted in shelves stuffed with stagnant products that no one actually wanted. I mean, some stores were finding that 40% of their items sold less than 1 unit a month. No way you can run a profitable business like that. The new, Japanese-inspired model, it uses daily, customized shipments based on hyperlocal data, neighborhood demographics, and even the local weather forecast. It just goes to show that knowing exactly what your customer wants in real time completely changes the entire economic model of a convenience store.
All right, let's jump into Act 4, Cult Brands and Niches, Selling Psychology.
$1.4 billion. That is the absolutely massive valuation of Liquid Death. And here's the kicker. They achieved this not by selling you on the purity of some pristine mountain spring, but by putting plain, ordinary water into a hardcore punk rock tallboy can covered in skulls.
Look, the truth is, the success of the bottled water industry is really just the success of the marketing industry. And Liquid Death, they completely skipped traditional marketing altogether. They didn't even try to compete on crispness or pH levels. They went straight for viral chaos. They scored exclusive distribution at Live Nation music festivals, forcing their cans into the hands of concertgoers, and somehow managed to make the plainest drink in the world feel rebellious and aspirational. It's a literal masterclass in psychological positioning. Over in a totally different niche, Athletic Brewing tackled the non-alcoholic beer market by just completely reinventing the manufacturing process. Instead of doing what everyone else did, which was brew regular beer and then boil off the alcohol at the very end, they designed a proprietary process specifically for non-alcoholic brewing from day one. They implemented 10 to 12 changes across all the brewing stages, like skipping pasteurization entirely, and incredibly, they squeeze 1 gallon of beer out of just 3.5 gallons of water. To put that in perspective, a typical craft brewer needs like 7 gallons of water. This extreme efficiency is exactly what helped them capture a massive third of all category growth.
And finally, Act 5, the power of localization. Global brands, local tastes.
So, McDonald's. We all know it, but it is truly an international giant. An incredible 59% of their revenue comes from international markets. That means the vast majority of the money fueling the Golden Arches is actually coming from outside the United States. To understand how they actually pulled this off, we've got to look at their evolution. They opened their first U.S. store way back in 1955 with just 3 items on the menu. By 1967, they began their international expansion. Fast forward to 1996, they expanded into India, where they respected local cultures by completely omitting beef, instead featuring items like the mutton Maharaja Mac. And then, jump to 2021, they tapped into global pop culture with the BTS meal. That single crossover drove an unbelievable 40% sales increase from the prior year.
Translating local tastes to a global audience is honestly an incredible science. Take the McFlurry, for instance. That actually originated in Canada before completely conquering the world. Or the McSpicy, which started out as just a local taste variation in China. Then you have these hyper-exclusives that just stay in their local markets, like the Makalu Tikki Burger in India, which is made with a potato and pea patty to cater to local street food tastes, or the hazelnut-filled McPops in Spain. They just adapt to regional tastes so brilliantly.
But, there's definitely a catch to all this adaptation. As McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski pointed out, there's 70 different types of chicken sandwiches all across the world. I mean, that is a whole lot of localized redundancy. And because of that, McDonald's is actually now actively looking at how to streamline these massive variations. Because at a certain point, too much local flavor can actually start to bog down the overall economic machine of the company.
Which brings us to a final, kind of provocative question to ponder. As these mega brands continue to totally master efficiency, data, and human psychology, is the future of our food being decided by what tastes best, or simply by what scales smartest? The hidden mechanics of these giants